Hi, I'm Anna Denton-Jones of Refreshing Law Limited, and this is the first in a series of Knowledge November sessions looking at the Data Protection Act and subject access requests. The first thing to note about a subject access request is it doesn't need to say on it, this is a subject access request. A little bit like grievances, it doesn't need to sort of say it in flashing lights at the top. So whilst you might well get requests that are obviously subject access requests, so maybe something saying, please send me all the data that you hold on me, you may well also get subject access requests that are a bit more opaque. So, for example, in connection with perhaps 360-degree feedback that's obtained during the appraisal process, somebody who is asking to actually see that information that's been gathered, perhaps in an email to their line manager, it may not be so obvious that it's captured by the legislation, but it would be because it's in writing and it is requesting personal data about that person. So it is important that you train line managers when to spot these sorts of requests, because obviously they won't necessarily all come to HR or even to the person who might have appointed as your sort of data protection person within an organisation. So it's important that everybody knows, because that could be received by your receptionist or anybody in the organisation. In terms of timescale, I'm sure you're all aware that you've got 40 days from the date on which you receive the request to deal with it. But that is a long stop date. The actual duty under the legislation is to deal with the matter promptly. And I do quite often see cases where a request has come in. I've had an example this week. A request came in dated the 22nd of September, and it's taken until the middle of October for it to get passed on to me to help the organisation to deal with. Obviously that has dramatically reduced the amount of time you've got to deal with it, and if you've got extensive searches to make, you might need to think about dealing with these things more promptly and making sure that everybody who might receive such a request realises that 40-day date is in there. The other thing that you need to think about sometimes is checking the identity of the person who is making the request. Now, obviously, when you know your staff, it may be obvious. An email to a line manager, they know who it's coming from. But in large organisations, perhaps where the request has come into HR, you might not know everybody. You might need to just verify who somebody is. The other issue to think about is where somebody has perhaps written, or a third party's written in for that person. So often a solicitor, it could be trade union rep. You would need to see a letter of authority from the individual authorising you to respond to that third party rather than to them as an individual. The other thing is the Information Commissioner talks about the fact that because the request only has to be made in writing, that could be through the use of social media. So you could get a request via Twitter or on Facebook post or something like that, in which case you definitely want to verify that the person behind the Twitter handle is the individual concerned, and you'd want to take it obviously offline to then deal with. So there might be issues around checking identity. There are circumstances in which you can go back to the person who's making the request and potentially buy yourself a little bit more time. That might be to get £10 from them if you are going to choose to invoke your power to request a £10 admin fee, and that's the most you can charge, and that's been the case ever since the Act came into force, and it doesn't seem likely to change. So £10 might be one way of buying yourself a little bit more time. The second would be actually trying to narrow down perhaps the data that somebody's looking for. So let's say they've asked for all emails that you hold on them. You are able to go back to that person and say, do you really want all emails that we hold on you? Or actually, are you looking for something more specific? Is it particular email conversation between particular email individuals about you? Or is it in a particular date time period that you're looking for, or is it in relation to a particular issue? And you can ask the person to narrow it down. If they then come back to you and they say, no, I do want absolutely everything, then unfortunately, under the Data Protection Act, they are entitled to know what all of that data is that you hold on them. And, you know, if that's the case, then we are into the most serious searching. But obviously if they come back and they are prepared to narrow it down, then obviously you only need to deal with that narrowed down request. So that's another way in which you can potentially control a little bit of what's going on. In our second session, we'll be looking at the issues around making those searches and what that might extend to. But if you have any questions, please do email me. It's adenton@refreshinglawltd, all one word, .co.uk. Thank you very much.